It's been a while, but I'm back with episode 22, a Decepticon raider in King Arthur's court. So let's get at it. This is Energon Entries. Welcome to Energon Entries, everybody. As always, I'm your host, Matt Freites, and I hope that this finds you well. Before we get into this episode, I do want to say one thing, actually two things. First of all, I do appreciate everybody that has come to this podcast over the last couple of months. It's been amazing to see not only the influx of new people, but seeing people engage with this content in both a positive and negative way. And that's okay, because this content isn't perfect. But I appreciate everybody who listens, everybody who watches anything that I do and provides me any kind of feedback in any way. The second thing is I want to apologize, and I want to apologize for not being on my regular release cadence. In all honesty, this has been a really trying last month or so. My parents are both 77 years old. They live in Massachusetts, and unfortunately, they have been having some issues at home. And this is just inherent to becoming older. It's inherent to becoming old, and when you have aging parents, especially when you live far away, it becomes difficult. And so I have not been at home. I will finally be going home very soon, but I've had this episode written up for a while. I just have not been able to sit down and actually record it. And so if you have stuck with me through this, understanding that I'm not doing this professionally and that I'm trying my best to give you the best content I can, I appreciate you sticking with this, and I appreciate your understanding in this time. And with that, let's get to the episode recap. The episode begins with Warpath and Hoist battling Starscream, Rumble, Ravage, and Ramjet until the Decepticons retreat and stumble upon an energy source in a nearby cave. When the Decepticons investigate, they accidentally activate ancient runes, transporting them and soon the Autobots to Britain in 543 AD, where they encounter Sir Wigand of Blackthorn and Sir Rival Atheling the Red. Eager to rule, Starscream sides with Wigand while the Autobots ally with Sir Atheling and help in a jousting tournament to resolve the feud. However, Starscream, impatient with chivalry, kidnaps Atheling's daughter, Nemu, and forces the residents of Wigand's castle to construct a generator to power the Decepticons. As the Autobots and Knights prepare for a final assault, the wizard Bort recharges Warpath and Hoist with a lightning spell, enabling them to reclaim the castle and destroy Starscream's generator. Recognizing the Autobots as time travelers, Bort leads them back to the cave, where they face a dragon guarding the time portal. Using gunpowder, Bort scares off the dragon, allowing the group to return to their own time. The episode ends with Megatron greeting the returned Autobots and Decepticons with cannon fire, only for Starscream to tackle him in overjoyed relief, interrupting Megatron's shot and leaving him less than thrilled to see Starscream back. So this is definitely an off-the-wall episode, obviously. There's time travel, and we've seen silly things in this show, but it seems like this is probably one of the more silly things that we've seen. And this is an episode that starts you at what appears to be Stonehenge, and it seems very geographically specific for a show that has been sort of nebulous in that regard. And this skirmish that happens here is something that has consequences because it seems to put thousand-year-old icon, and it seems to destroy a part of it. I mean, Stonehenge has been there for thousands of years, and it's something that's one of the most sacred things in the world. And in this show, they're just shooting at it. They obviously, and I'm talking about the Decepticons, don't care about any of human history and what that all means. And this episode is very light with robots. There are not a lot of Autobots or Decepticons. As a matter of fact, there's only, 3 Decepticons, 2 Autobots for the most part, for the majority of this episode. And so that's kind of interesting. There's no real explanation on how the Transformers time traveled in the first place. I mean, obviously we know there was some sort of an energy source, power source, and then all of a sudden, boom, they were in 543 AD, but there really isn't anything that says, oh, X, Y, and Z is why we got here. Usually in the show, there is a little bit more explanation. However, when they get there, Warpath finds out that he can't stay transformed when he's this low on energy. It made me think, does that mean that transformation is more energy sapping than just being in robot mode? What is their natural state? Perhaps robot mode is their natural state. It was never really explained in the show overall how the Transformers use their energy. We know that Energon is very important, but we don't really know what takes energy, what doesn't take energy, and obviously there seems to be some kind of a hierarchy of how their energy is used, and in this case, they haven't recharged in so long that transformation clearly saps too much energy. Moving on to the humans, the knights were talking in kind of an old English, very over the top, which makes sense for this show, and it's probably somewhat accurate for the time period. I mean, if you think about old English, think about medieval times, they probably did talk in a way that is drastically different than they would have talked in the 80s, let alone how they talk now. But when the Autobots go over there, when this skirmish happens, Spike was not with them. He was not with Warpath and Hoist during the initial skirmish, and somehow he ends up in 543. I don't really understand that, and I also don't understand if he wasn't there originally, why would they go get him? What would Spike do for time travel? Maybe there's something I'm missing. As soon as he sees the Knight's lady, he starts flirting with her. It seems like he does. In previous episodes leading up to this, it seems, or at least was implied, that he was dating Carly. So why is he so smitten with this girl? And then, of course, to try and win her over, he finds himself in a jousting tournament, which is absolutely hysterical because Spike, up until this point, has to be rescued all the time. Rarely is he in the driver's seat, or is he somebody who is powerful. And of course, predictably, maybe the most predictable thing ever in this episode, he gets absolutely crushed when jousting. Now, the beef between the two warlords, if you want to call them that, it makes sense for the time, and it also provides us with a good side and an evil side. And I think that that is key because now they're acting very similarly to their Transformers counterparts, Optimus Prime and Megatron. You have two leaders who are going about things two completely different ways, and that's kind of where we are. Sir Wiggin is shooting his shot, though, as he's trying to keep the princess captive a little bit later in the episode. That's where, obviously, Starscream gets really tired of things and kidnaps the princess. And Sir Wiggin, who is really the reason why she is held captive, he shoots his shot, and he tries to get his move in. Spike, at this time, is climbing up to try and rescue her. He's failing, and immediately he's in the mode. Like, it's great, because that's pure Spike. But then the best part, and this is probably karma because of what I talked about earlier with Carly, not only did Sir Wiggin shoot his shot, but it worked. And Spike had to go there and find out, oh, by the way, we're getting married. And it's like, he's so disappointed, but in my mind, I'm like, you have Carly at home. Carly is a complete baddie. You do not need this medieval chick in your life. Trust me, you're going to be better off when you get back. Moving on to the Autobots, though, when Warpath and Hoist are attempting to clean up the rubble from this skirmish that happened at Stonehenge Light or whatever, Hoist is in vehicle mode, and he looks very, very tiny to Warpath in robot mode. And this, again, speaks to inconsistencies in the animation. It probably has something to do with the animation studio who did this episode, but there's always been inconsistencies, but Warpath looked really big in robot mode, and Hoist looked really small to be cleaning up all of this debris. And this might actually be the first time we've ever heard Warpath speak. I remember back in the show him having a blue flashing light when he talked, but his face did not have anything like that, so I don't know if that's something that I misremember. We'll have to keep watching that. And a little bit later, Hoist, who is one of the quote-unquote smart Autobots, and I'm thinking of Red Alert, I'm thinking of Grapple, Wheeljack, these are what we consider smart Autobots, but in this episode, Hoist wasn't smart enough to try and create energy for he and Warpath, and you'd think that he would have been able to do what Starscream did and try to create his own energy, but that didn't seem to come into his brain, and it took what seemed like a Merlin type and magic to save them, which is kind of ridiculous. Like, that's something that the Autobots should be able to overcome. And then, of course, the Autobots completely wipe the Decepticons clean, and it's pretty much like that's how every episode ends. No matter what happens, no matter the kind of leverage that is there, the Autobots are just able to wipe the floor with the Decepticons. And it's like, boom, that's it. And speaking of the Decepticons, let's talk about them. So Ramjet is in this episode. And now I know why his name makes sense. Because he is meant to literally ram things. But I will tell you that he's not very good at it. Because he goes to ram Warpath, and Warpath completely takes him out. So much so that he gets his nose crushed in. And he gets it crushed in not once in this episode, but twice. So for a guy whose name is all about ramming, he's not very good at it because he wasn't able to do it successfully at all in this episode. Now, Starscream is again attempting to be the smartest in the room. Starscream is very, very selfish. And so people who are that selfish, generally thinking that they're ahead of the game, it doesn't always work out, and it doesn't in this instance. However, Starscream does realize the position he is in, having traveled back in time. No Megatron. He doesn't have to deal with the Autobots, at least not the whole complement of Autobots. He also doesn't have Megatron to deal with either. This is a really great position for him, and it's a position that he tries to take advantage of. However, the Decepticons obviously travel back in time early, and they see the knights in armor and think that they're humans, essentially attempting to cosplay as robots. Now, I don't know if cosplaying was what it was or what it is today, but that's what I thought of. It's like, are they LARPing or are they cosplaying as Transformers? And little does Starscream know what is to come, especially at these cons now. And I think even Transformers Con or whatever you want to call it, I'm sure there are people who cosplay as something from Transformers. So that was kind of fun. Starscream also is smarter than Hoist in that he's trying to make his own energy. And in order to do so, he is taking gold and somehow crushes it with his hand and turns it into a wire. There's no other steps that go toward that. It's gold crushed into a wire. How does that happen? I have no idea. However, and this probably fits with the time because of the way that caste systems work and everything, but the Decepticons essentially using slavery as a means of energy, that so tracks. That is totally something that they would do. Rumble was one of the Decepticons that went with them, and he's being asked to collect a barrel of bird poop, and it's disgusting. It also makes me think of, I think it's the second Ace Ventura movie with the guano, when he said, guano, why does that sound so familiar? And he found out that the bowls were made of guano. That's kind of what I felt like watching this here. But the Decepticons are being resourceful because they're in the past. They're very smart, obviously, because they are aliens from another planet who are technologically advanced compared to humans. So they go through into this world, use the knowledge that they have of science, and try to use what they can in the world to make their own energy. They were much more prepared for this than the Autobots, and that always happens. But we had Hoist. He's one of the smartest Autobots, and somehow he couldn't figure that out. Not sure. Fast forward to the end of the episode, when everything happens, everything settles out, the Autobots decide to save the Decepticons, and so of course they have to go back to where they traveled in time, and there's a dragon. And Starscream is scared of a dragon. And you know what? He's lucky that Hoist decided to take them back with him, and that's why he's there. So he's complaining, but it's like, dude, we could leave you here, and that wouldn't be great either. And of course, when Starscream and crew come back into today's world, Megatron is there, and Megatron is not happy to see Starscream whatsoever. Megatron is obviously like, oh my goodness, here are the Autobots, starts firing at them. Starscream ends up ruining that because he ruins everything. And now Starscream has lost everything and every leverage and advantage that he had, and Megatron is not happy about it. So, what were some animation errors? I don't know if this is one, but in one scene, Ramjet's nose is completely fine. In the very next scene, after it's been crushed by Warpath, in one of those two instances in which he could not ram anything. And so he fixed it really fast. I feel like that's a little oversight there. So this episode was fun because it was silly. Definitely off the beaten path, certainly strays a little bit from what we've normally seen in terms of plot points. It was nice to see Hoist and Warpath kind of get some shine. Spike was completely unnecessary, and he's getting to the point of annoyance because every time he's here, something happens to him, and they have to derail everything and all momentum just to save him. But it was kind of funny to see him get absolutely obliterated in a jousting contest. It was a fun little watch. I don't think it mattered overall to the overall cause. There was nothing in here that furthered the war between the Autobots and Decepticons, but it was fun. Have you watched this episode recently? What did you think? Find me on Instagram at Energon Entries Pod is the handle to do that. You can also email me, Matty Ice Media, MatticeMedia @gmail.com. Next episode, which will be next week, hopefully, we will recap and review The God Gambit, which is episode 23. Hope this finds everybody well. I hope this finds everybody safe, and I'll talk to you next time. This is Energon Entries. The opinions and viewpoints expressed on Energon Entries are those of Matt Freitz and his guests, and not necessarily those of the Matty Ice Media Network. Energon Entries is exclusively owned by Matt Freites and is brought to you by the Matty Ice Media Network.